Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Formulate for Impact, bringing environmental intelligence into the feed formulation workflow. This webinar is sponsored by Datacor and presented by Feed Strategy and Feed and Grain. My name is Jackie Remke. I'm the editor-in-chief of Watts Feed Brands, and I will be your moderator today. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We will hold a question and answer segment at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to submit your questions during the session using the GoToWebinar control panel. We will answer as many questions as we can with the time allowed. I'd also like to note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available to view as an on-demand video starting tomorrow. To register for upcoming webinars, to view an on-demand video of today's webinar, or to watch webinars on related topics, please visit www.feedstrategy.com/webinars and feedandgrain.com/webinars. Courtesy of our speakers and sponsor, we have a handout available to download. You can locate your handout in the Materials tab of your GoToWebinar viewer. Please note that the handouts are only available to download during the live broadcast. And finally, at the conclusion of today's webinar, there will be a brief survey. We'd greatly appreciate if you took the time to fill it out. The sponsor of today's webinar is Datacor. Datacor empowers animal feed and pet food manufacturers with AI-powered tools to control costs, maintain compliance, and deliver consistent nutrition across every formula and facility. They are a leading provider of software built specifically for process manufacturers, chemical distributors, and engineers. Datacor helps you balance nutrition and cost with real world optimization tools that adjust formulas based on ingredient availability, pricing, and plant capabilities. Make better sourcing decisions that support margin goals and long term sustainability. For more information on services and products offered by Datacor, please visit datacor.com. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Ian Mealy and Irene Rozike Conesa. Ian Mealy is the Product Marketing Director for Formulation at Datacor. He boasts more than 30 years of experience with formulation software. He began his career after a degree in agriculture and joining a large UK cooperatives graduate program where he acquired extensive experience in feed business operations. With over 25 years at Datacor, Ian has collaborated with global clientele across diverse sectors and such as feed, pet food, aqua, premix, and food and beverage. He is passionate about helping customers optimize business processes, improve ingredient purchasing strategies, and enhance product quality. And with 10 years of large scale LCA and sustainability experience, Irene Rosie Conesa makes environmental data actually useful in agri-food. Before co-founding Nuvio Planet, she led sustainability and digital transformation teams at a leading animal nutrition company, working at the intersection of science, data, and industry operations. She built Nuvio Planet on a simple conviction: measuring environmental impact should be as straightforward as running a financial report. Today, the platform delivers audit-grade LCA across animal feed and livestock value chains, integrated directly into the workflows of producers. And now with that, I would like to pass the presentation over to Irene. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jackie, and hello everyone from my side. So today I would like to start with something that is going to be the foundation of everything else we are going to discuss. And this is the topic that feed formulator is making the biggest climate decision in the entire animal protein value chain. So why is that? I think this might not be news to many of you, but feed is the largest source of emissions in animal protein. So when we look at the environmental footprint of meat, milk, and eggs, depending on the species, the contribution from feed can be from 40 to 80% of the total environmental impact. And the data is not getting better. So the latest research from FAO, from IPCC, already shows that the emissions from livestock continue to rise. And feed is not only the largest environmental lever in animal protein, but is also the largest cost line. So between 60 to 70% of the final production comes from the feed. This is why we say that the feed desk is now the decision center for cost, for nutrition, and now we need to add the third dimension, which is the environmental impact. This is both a challenge and an opportunity, and this is what Ian and I want to discuss with you today and want to show you our approach to solve this problem. Now, when we look at sustainability, we are focusing on environmental sustainability. Yeah, there are different parts, social, economic, and the environment. And today we are focusing only on the environmental sustainability. And when we look at the demand, yeah, for this type of assessments, we clearly see four driving forces. First, we have the regulations, where the direction is clear in Europe, in the US, in Asia, different parts of the world. Companies are already required to report their emissions. Then, second, customers. So if your company is not obliged to report emissions today, probably most likely your customers, protein brands or retailers, they have climate commitments that cannot meet without you. So they have probably asked you for the carbon footprint, for the environmental footprint, because they cannot fulfill the requirements without your data. Then third, we have capital. So capital, bank loans, they are already flowing to companies that can prove, that can measure the environmental impact, the emissions of their operations. And then fourth, we have the physical climate risk. So agri-food is officially a high-risk sector, and climate risk is no longer a sustainability conversation. So this is sitting next to cost risk. This is sitting next to geopolitical risk conversations. Now, the feed formulator is sitting at the intersection of all these pressures. And and I mean, to fulfill the requirements that the feed formulator is asked to do, they need the data. So the data of of a feed meal, when we look at that, when we zoom in to the typical carbon footprint of a feed meal, we see that the carbon footprint in this case, um, more than 90% is sitting in the supply chain upstream. So when we look at the ingredients, the raw materials that are purchased, when we look at the inbound transportation, and to have a compliant footprint, we need to look at and calculate the footprint of these ingredients, but also the own production. So what happens in the feed mill? What kind of energy, electricity, fuels? And when we have a look at the compliant, at the complete picture, we have what the feed mill currently needs today. And and this is the problem, yeah. So the problem to calculate this is that you need the data, you need the tools, and you need the time to look at that. And today, many companies started to calculate this environmental impact, but still, this is so it started a few years ago. And this brings us to the problem that we are discussing today, which is that the optimization is still done without the environmental impact. And if you are doing these calculations, you know the pain. So maybe you have your Excel offline. If you get a request for a carbon footprint of one formulation, you need to rebuild the calculations. You have the data again in one specific maybe folder that you cannot share with the rest of the teams. So it's a bit fragmented and disconnected with where you normally make decisions, which is with your feed formulation software. Now, how to put cost, nutrition, and impact together. Now I will hand over to Ian because he's going to guide us to how it is done today.
Thank you, Irene. So let's look closer at that situation for the formulator and how they interact with the rest of the company in trying to provide this information. As I speak to many of my customers, feed manufacturers and integrators, many of them are taking those first steps that Irene has just been describing of trying to measure the impact of their feeds. So really their very first step is just to understand their current status for whatever reason. And the motivation here is as Irene's described, meeting regulations, but also meeting customer need and request. But the calculations that are required on the formula, the calculation of carbon, but not only carbon, other impacts are challenging, and this exposes somewhat of a disconnect between the formulator who is creating these feeds routinely and those who are often tasked with managing the sustainability or managing the reporting of sustainability. They're often different departments at this point. Given also that the calculations they're using, they are often manual or at least managed in a spreadsheet and therefore separate to the formulation system, and trying to bring data from different sources together in order to do that calculation. This really exposes the disconnection and the challenge that many of the customers of my customers are seeing. In essence, it's quite simple to do, but it's the challenge of bringing data together. And also, formulation is dynamic. Formulas are constantly being changed for many reasons. And so having to repeat calculations is, whilst having this disconnection, adds layers of complexity to it. Irene, I guess from your situation, the way you're advising your customers, specifically from an LCA perspective, I guess you're recognizing some of the things I see as well in this challenge, but also this approach, these first steps that people are making.
Yeah, Ian. Yeah, thanks. Definitely. So I think I mean, the truth is that that's normally how companies start, right? It's like, okay, get your data together, try to start with the calculations, and then once you understand that, then you can go in and use a tool, yeah, that can automate, that can basically allow for digital scaling, yeah, to all your portfolio. And I mean, luckily today, I mean, when I started doing LCAs 10 years ago, everything was manual, right? So for one formulation, for one product, we needed days, weeks. And now, luckily with the technology and automation, we can definitely help companies for the scalability.
Thanks. Yeah. And so, yes, these very first steps are trying to approach it from what seems like a simple perspective, but really face numerous challenges. And so it's logical that companies try and scale this process through a more connected approach. And from a formulator, for a formulator, this can be tackled quite quickly in one way, because by simply adding nutrients, or what you might term more characteristics, into a formulation system, you are able to hold information that was previously held perhaps separately and collated separately in a spreadsheet. This allows you to scale to a certain extent by having automated calculation of a footprint within the formulation tool based on that data. It has some advantages. It is automated, and so it is a next step. It's also responsive. As you change formulas, you can easily recalculate that information, or more easily, I should say. But still, that data, collecting that data is a challenge. The fact that you have to ensure that you're using the right data for the ingredients you're utilizing, you have to maintain that data. And also the fact that the calculation is specifically related just to that formula, only to the feed itself. And so even with the ability to scale somewhat and provide reports within the formulation system, we're still hitting some limitations on the approach. And so formulation, as I say, does provide some reporting tools within it. This screen, for example, is our formulation and the new sustainability dashboard. It's a report inside the system, and what we're seeing here is a chart with each bar representing a different formula, a selection of formulas within the production plant for a particular environmental measurement. Climate change is the one I've selected here. And we're seeing the measurement for each of those formulas in relation to a target I've set. I don't have to set a target, but this is a useful way for me to see how different feeds are in relation to each other and to this particular target. And so formulation can provide reports like this. It can also allow us to dig a little deeper into the formula and understand where these impacts are coming from. But again, these questions are, we can answer certain questions, but we can only go so far. Given that we can look a little bit deeper, then it's logical that the formulator will really want to go even deeper. And the reason are because of the motivations of working with customers or within our own business. There are certain opportunities in terms of helping our customers, if we're a feed manufacturer, obtain better information for their situation and even provide advice and assist clients with their targets and priorities in environmental measurements. Or even if I'm an integrator, the ability to have a holistic view on feed design and how that impacts on the environmental sustainability measurements. In both of these situations, it makes sense to have a better view beyond the feed. So therefore, formulators will want to demonstrate or need to demonstrate improvements on their products or as a company as a whole. I work with some customers who have corporate sustainability targets, for example. So not only are they trying to assist their own customers, but they have their own internal targets which they're trying to achieve. Given this, it makes sense that they want to make informed decisions on the product design, but in the context of animal performance and indeed ingredient purchasing. And so I think personally, from where I'm sitting as a formulator, or from that perspective, it's imperative that formulators start to make decisions in optimization, considering the sustainability of feed. As Irene said earlier, it's not just about cost, it's not just about nutrition anymore, but environmental impact becomes part of the whole decision that we have to make when we're designing feeds. And for this decision to be correct, or the best decision to be made, we need to start to understand the full life cycle. We need a holistic view. So I'm going to take a quick look at how optimization will play an important role in this type of decision, but also why it's important that we do use optimization in our decision making in this holistic view. So in order to do that, I'd like to just work through an example. I'm not going to show a formula, but I'm going to show the environmental impact of a formula and how that might change. The chart that we're showing here, where the red star is, this is showing the carbon footprint on the x-axis for a feed that has been optimized. And this is simply a measure of the carbon footprint of the feed itself. No visualization here of anything other than the feed footprint. And that is being charted against the cost of that feed. It has a certain value, so the footprint is just under 1. I would like, for whatever reason, to look at moving that carbon footprint down. That might be to achieve my own targets. It might be that my customer needs this feed to be of a lower footprint, or want to assess the impact of reducing that footprint. Now, this feed has been optimized in the normal way. It's, first of all, it's meeting nutritional targets in the normal way. So it's achieving the quality that we're asking for, and it's achieving it at the lowest cost. So it's a standard optimization here. And this is just a simple readout of the carbon footprint for this recipe. Now, if I want to try and move the carbon footprint lower, as any formulator knows, that imposing a restriction, assuming everything else stays the same, there's likely to be a cost in doing that, because the formula has to adjust and find ways to meet that restriction with what it has available as in terms of ingredients. And so as we move this to the left, this chart is showing the bars on the chart are showing the cost as it increased in this feed, in this particular feed, as I forced the carbon footprint downwards. Now, in order to achieve these reasonable requests, I'm going to have to look for ways to mitigate that cost impact, or to understand other aspects of the impact here, or the effect of this feed, all whilst maintaining animal performance, or understanding what is happening to animal performance. So the mitigation strategies I might explore are things like ingredient selection. Could I achieve a lower footprint with a slightly different or a completely different ingredient selection? Is that feasible? Might there be waste in my product specification? Am I, for example, formulating to protein rather than digestible amino acid? And would that have an effect on the carbon footprint? Is there an acceptable cost trade-off? What might I be willing to spend on reduction in the feed compared to other aspects of the whole system? And this is linked to the next point about downstream benefits. I can only understand that cost trade-off aspect in respect of other downstream benefits, whatever they may be. And Irene alluded to other incentives, such as being able to access better financial terms, for example. Formulation is such a great tool for assessing decisions like these. Which of these routes or combination of routes is a good way to go? Just to explore the acceptable cost trade-off, for example, this chart, I've returned to the chart here, and our chart actually shows the lowest possible carbon footprint at the extreme left and the lowest cost recipe. And somewhere in the middle there is an acceptable cost that we may be willing to spend for some other piece of benefit elsewhere in the whole system. And we can achieve this automatically in optimization using new methodologies. But of course, we can only assess this properly through the ability to understand that whole picture. And so at this point, I'd like to hand it back to Irene to take us through understanding the holistic view. Apologies. Just before I do so, just to summarize, for formulation, we do have the ability to do a quick calculation within formulation, but we still have the challenge of obtaining the data. And feed is only one part of the equation. So hence the partnership here with Nuvio Planet to integrate formulation and LCA tools together. Irene, sorry.
Thank you, Ian. Perfect transition. Right. So yeah, thanks a lot, Ian, for guiding us to how it is done today. And yeah, so with this partnership, basically what we are doing is that we are building the environmental data into Datacor. So Datacor as the system of record where the feed formulator has all the information about ingredients, suppliers, volumes, and Nuvio Planet as the LCA engine, then both connected via API. Everything, I mean, this will change the picture. Yeah, so you don't need, or the users of Datacor, you don't need another software, you don't need another tool. So we are just building this into your existing workflow. So Datacor will be able to enable this new sustainability module, and you will automatically get all the environmental impacts of your formulations. So you have the impact visible at the moment of formulating. And maybe a bit about Nuvio Planet. So Nuvio Planet, yeah. The Nuvio Planet is a modular LCA software for feed and livestock. So technically, we have solutions from ingredients up to the supermarket shelf, and from product level to corporate level environmental impact. So customers, in this case, feed formulation, so feed manufacturers, they can use Nuvio Planet up to the feed factory gate. But because it's a modular software, you can connect basically feed then with a livestock module of poultry, pig, cattle. Then you can connect that with further downstream modules to have the processing steps, and then connect it again with the packaging, distribution, warehouse up to the supermarket shelf. Now, commercially, why are companies using these solutions, or in general, why would you be interested in using LCA? How is this data used? Well, our customers, which are mainly feed manufacturers, integrators, processors, and also feed additive companies, they use LCA data for different reasons. One of them is to protect their margin. So when they can find the carbon hotspots, that's normally related to the cost hotspots as well. So they can integrate sustainability or LCA data into their R&D processes to have products that are more sustainable. Then companies also use LCA data to make supplier decisions. So this is how what this enables to switch suppliers to see how the footprint will change. Then companies also use LCA data to be ready for tenders. So um, companies or customers asking for the carbon footprint, they might already use carbon for tendering. So if they already have costs that can be used to the abatement of their CO2 footprint in their three, so upstream, they will choose among suppliers the one that has the lowest carbon footprint because that's already included in their budget. And then customer differentiation. So companies building these capabilities today can already differentiate compared to the ones that don't. So they can differentiate their products and help their customers, downstream farmers, integrators in the use phase. Now, about the integration, Datacor Nuvio Planet, how is this integrated? Okay, now there's a bit of delay. Very good. So, all right, so Datacor as the system of record and Nuvio Planet as the LCA engine, as I mentioned. We have basically all the transactions already in Datacor, all the ingredients, all the suppliers. Then these transactions via API will go to Nuvio Planet via this ingredient mapping, energy mapping. So the customers, the users would need to do this mapping once. So this ingredient in Datacor with this name, with this code, is equivalent to this ingredient in our database, in our ingredients database, which I will mention in a second from where we get the data. And then with this mapping, then the software, Nuvio Planet, will know what ingredients, what energy, what transportation to use in the algorithms. So our LCA engine, which is following the methodologies that are standard in uh, in Europe and accepted globally, like ISO standards, LEAP guidelines, the EU PEF-CR for feed, and also for corporate reporting, greenhouse gas protocol aligned, FAO, and IPCC rather for the livestock, so for the farm emissions. Then our methodology will calculate the footprint and we will send it back to Datacor as a third component, which will be live together with the cost and together with the nutrition. Now, a question that we are always asked, right? It's like, where does the data come from? Is that okay? You get the footprint, but where does it come from? So, as I mentioned, our methodology follows all the standards, and we have recently been approved by standards like GMP Plus, like Ovocom in Belgium. So we are completely compliant with the feed LCA calculations, and we are one of the tools that can be used directly to do the LCA of feed. Now, the data comes from different sources, and we support companies in their sustainability journey, which is always the same. So when a company starts measuring their environmental impact, the first step is always to do the baseline. So the baseline of your footprint today. And for that, we use secondary data sources. So secondary data sources means that for the carbon footprint of wheat produced in Germany. We use today the GFLI database, which is the industry's reference database. Then to fill gaps, we use another secondary database, which is called EcoInvent. So all the emission factors, they are traceable and they are updated according to the updates of the databases. Then for the emission factors of operations, transportation, and so on, we use EcoInvent together with some default factors from the PEF, which is the standard in Europe. And once you have this baseline, yes, so calculating your first footprint, that can be really quick. And then you will know your hotspots. So where does the impact come from? Where does the carbon come from? Where does the emissions in water come from? Then you will see where the impact is actually sitting. And once you identify these hotspots, then you can go with primary data. So primary data means that you can calculate the emissions of your own products, maybe of your suppliers from if it's crops, maybe from your suppliers in the feed additive industry. And that's why I mentioned that we support customers in this journey, because we also have solutions for this purpose. So once the customer has the hotspots, they can work with us to do the LCA of other products. Now, I would like to stay in this hotspots. Yeah. So where does the impact come from? This is what companies want to answer. Yeah, that's the purpose of LCA. So to really identify where the impact comes from. And with this integration with Datacor, the users will be able to see it. So the impact, the environmental impact, will be visible in the software, so you can really see which ingredients drive the impact, the environmental impact, and the cost. You can compare and switch suppliers and see how the results will change. And you can respond to your customers, yeah, fast. So it's like they don't need to wait for this. You can automatically calculate your footprint. Now this visibility, thanks to this visibility, basically you can change now the way you make decisions. So from basically modeling the impact that we were doing before, now we can embed the impact into your decision-making process. So you can calculate your emissions, you can manage them, and what this integration really unlocks is that the users can run simulations. So you can run unlimited what-if scenarios. So you can say, okay, what if I change suppliers? What if I swap ingredients? What if I change the feeding strategy for my customer? And this feeding concepts, this becomes now the new strategy where you add this sustainability element. And here, because of course for your customers, that's really the commercial potential of sustainability of LCA data. So this is where you can really differentiate your portfolio when you talk to your customers. Because your footprint matters, but again, I think the efficiency gains and the benefit of feed is really in the use phase, in the livestock phase. And with that, I will like to, I need to click twice. Okay. So to conclude from my side, I would like to mention that that the truth is, at the end of the day, your customers will not buy sustainability. And they will not buy sustainability because they don't sell sustainability either. They sell pork, they sell eggs, they sell milk, they sell salmon. And the truth is that the products that are winning today, they are the ones that don't basically compromise, that don't choose between performance and sustainability. So the products that are winning today, they will have both. So in this case, sustainability becomes a new attribute, a new product asset. And at the end of the day, the goal has not changed. So the goal is always to produce 1 unit of protein with fewer resources, lower cost, and fewer emissions. And here I brought some benefits that feed can have in the customer to reduce cost and emissions. So if, for example, the performance, so the feed conversion ratio is better, that will have a direct impact in the cost and in the emissions. So both will be reduced because the performance is better. And all these strategies, all these ideas, they are not new. So nutritionists, they have been doing basically climate work for decades, right? It's just that it was not called like that, but the goal was always the same. The only difference is that now we have a way to measure it. So now all these strategies, we can put an environmental impact label behind to prove the benefit for the value chain and for the final product. So with this, yeah, I would like to conclude. And Ian, back to you.
Thank you, Irene. I think that those last two slides really bring the two aspects together of formulation and LCA working together. One of the things that excites me about Datacor's formulation tools is the ability to investigate different scenarios very, very easily. And the fact that we do have to consider performance, quality, and nutrition aspects alongside cost and efficiency, but bring into that the environmental impact. These tools working together allow us that holistic view. One of the challenges we identified early in that journey that customers are having in terms of reporting sustainability is the data aspect, and the ability for us to delegate that to accredited sources held within Nuvio Planet, and leverage that data alongside the formulation tool, and leverage the calculation across the whole life cycle within Nuvio Planet becomes extremely helpful in making the correct decision or the most appropriate decision for the scenarios we're looking at. I think the integration will bring the immediacy of decision making that we need, as well as the reporting that we need to provide for customers. This partnership we have recently entered into, Irene, is exciting to see, and we're happy to be part of that with you. And as we develop this integration between the two tools, anybody who is on this call listening to us today, if you want to know more and to explore it further as we develop this integration together, please get in touch. And for that, I will close my comments and also say thank you. And I think we'll be moving to some questions and answers just now.
Great. Yes. Before we get started, thank you both. That was wonderful. Now, just a friendly reminder to our audience that there is a handout available to download. You can locate that in the handout materials tab of your GoToWebinar viewer window. And Again, this PDF is only available to download during this live broadcast. And don't forget to submit any questions you may have in the chat window. And I'll get started here by asking, so many companies are collecting sustainability data, publishing reports, and continuing to buy the same ingredients from the same suppliers. Is this actually changing procurement decisions, or is it filling in a column in a customer questionnaire? Irene, would you like to take that?
Yes, I can take that. Thank you. Yes, that's a very good question that we get asked also by companies. So the truth is that today things are starting to change. So sustainability reporting in the agri-food industry started only a few years ago, right? So I think other industries are a bit ahead, but in agri-food it's pretty recent. So until now it was mainly to fill the report because companies need to understand the data, need to understand the suppliers. But what we are seeing already is that companies are starting to choose suppliers based on the environmental impact as well. And I briefly mentioned this carbon tendering, and maybe just let me emphasize that because companies, or mainly protein brands or retailers, they have budget to abate their carbon emissions in their scope 3, so upstream. And this budget means that when a supplier with maybe different price even, but when a supplier has a lower carbon footprint, they would choose that supplier because that helps them to reach their climate target. So this is a real thing that is happening today, and we can already see that in the industry.
If I could add there as well, I see similar things from my perspective. Um, I think it's brought another dimension to ingredient selection. And I included that in one of the mitigation strategies. And I think, again, it's part of a journey that people, that feed manufacturers are on. So there is more awareness of this aspect of an ingredient, and therefore it's starting to educate their selection. And whilst it might be early days in terms of changing how people actually select ingredients now, for some, I think that will continue to evolve further.
Right? Now, everyone talks about supply chain transparency, but in practice, who is actually sharing environmental data and with whom? And how is it flowing across the value chain today? Irene?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yes. Yes. So I mean, I think one message, yeah, from Ian and myself today is that the industry is starting to move, and is going in the right direction. But the reality is that today this environmental data basically is flowing when there is pressure, right? Because customers ask for that. And the way it worked is that the companies, mainly downstream retailers, protein brands, they had the climate goals, right? I have mentioned that a couple of times. So the retailer making their climate goals, they were assigning the same emission factors, right, for the different, I don't know, chicken suppliers, pork suppliers, without really differentiating the real production systems. And what's happening now? It's a shift. So now companies upstream, they are starting to provide with the real data. So this is really an industry shift in that we are seeing with data flowing really from upstream, because that's where companies know the production, flowing downstream to the retailer or protein brands. And this is the shift. Yeah. So before it was more from downstream to upstream. Now we see this shift in from upstream to downstream. And then the other part of your question was about the format. That's another good point, because currently the format is really fragmented. So there is not like a machine readable, let's say, data point that is flowing in a system from supplier to supplier. So this is something that we are working on in together with Datacor now to digitalize the calculations, to have this prepared, because I think in a few years we will reach the point where every product needs to have this information. And today companies can already put it in the feed, in the label, because as I mentioned, now GMP Plus just released the standard to do the LCA of, and that can be done with Nuvio Planet. So you can put the LCA that you get from Nuvio Planet on your feed. So that's at least a really huge step towards the data points flowing in the value chain. So that's really the shift here that we see currently. I don't know if you would add anything, Ian, here.
I think the things I've seen to add to that, you mentioned upstream. I think sometimes the information required is, I agree, due to pressure, say, from retailers, but it's not directly necessarily on the feed company. They are needing to help their customer who is being asked for information by the retailer, for example, and that happening, but that then transmits downstream further, because in order to provide suitable information, that needs to be completed, and not it's improving all the time, but some of the data hasn't been available, and so that has to be pushed further back. So that's one aspect I see, and I think there's internal communication as well to, for example, shareholders or to a board, where there is a corporate requirement to say we are improving in this regard as a company, and so there are which it's a slightly different requirement, but that is a real requirement as well, that you have to adhere to, even if it's a different motivation or a different need.
Thank you. So, based on your experience, in which countries are companies changing their approach to food production with regard to environmental impact, considering that cheap raw materials from China have been replaced by others with lower environmental impact but higher costs? Um, Ian, would you like to take that one?
Yeah. So that's, yes, that's, again, we sort of touched on this somewhat in terms of the trade-off type of decision, and the awareness of footprint and other, let's say, benefits in relation to cost. I think it becomes, I think the overriding element still is financial. So there are so many aspects at play related to supply chain, as well as environment, as cost and quality in that ingredient. That is the skill of the formulator, to balance these elements together and test those out. And some companies have the skills to do that very well, and some don't do it as well as others, as you'd expect. I think the ability to utilize a system to test out situations, shows they're the best company, they're the most profitable companies, because they have the skills to make those decisions despite within those scenarios that they're presented with. So I think my experience in that so far is a mixed approach, and in those situations.
So, how do we ensure low cost formula with optimum nutrient availability in this period of rising cost of feed ingredients?
If I can answer that, I think keep using optimization, but look at the plant as a whole, because the relative value of ingredients can be best assessed by optimizing all ingredients together, all products together in a what I would call a multi-mix optimization. That gives you the chance to look at a global perspective of relative savings between different ingredient mixes. Think of the plant as, or your manufacturing facility, as a recipe in itself. So if you stuck with the same ingredients that you're using today, you can get optimal formulas within that selection. But if you change the selection of ingredients, there is the opportunity, despite ingredient cost rising, to have a lower overall cost than you would have had. And the best, as I say, the best way to assess that is from a global perspective, because looking at it by individual product by product, you do not get the scaling up to the volume that you're actually going to produce, and therefore the full global impact financially.
Thank you. And Irene, where does the feed transport and processing add into the emission calculation?
Um, so we have the, I mean, so if you say, for example, my feed mill is in Germany and I am buying soy from Brazil, so you need to enter in, well, the location of the origin of your ingredient, it's already in Datacor, the location of your feed mill, that's a data point that we need. Then we have already the distance. So it's like, okay, we calculate the distance, how many kilometers by barge, ship, truck, train from every country to every country in the world. That's in the PEFCR feed in one of the annexes. And if you know exactly where your ingredient comes from, we also have the option that the user can enter the distance in the transportation mode. And then the emission factor, so 1 ton transported per kilometer by train or by different trucks, we have it from EcoInvent. And that's, so what you need basically is nothing, yeah, because you have everything in Datacor, you have the location, so everything is calculated automatically. Only if you have better data, you can add that. And then the production, so that's also a data point that we need, that we will need from Datacor, which is the energy. So it's like kilowatt hour per kilo feed that you need in your feed mill. If it's from the grid or you have different fuels, you also have the option to add that. And then we scale it to the functional unit, so to what you produce, to have the impact. But yeah, sorry, I went too much into it. tighter
No.
with that, but we can have a separate call. I don't know who asked that, but yeah, happy to discuss that.
Okay, and we have time for one more question. So, in the case of multiple plant-based proteins, how will we assess the carbon emission level?
Yes, very good question. Of course, the plant-based protein. So, plant-based proteins, all these novel ingredients, that's really good. Together with now, of course, we have the topic of circular economy, so using feed products that that come from circular processes. So all of that, we we might not have ready to use emission factors in our databases, right? So of course, as a first approach, we would pick a proxy. There's in our databases which ingredient is relatively similar. And if you are a producer of these products, or if you really want to differentiate your product, then we will need to go into the production of that ingredient to do the LCA there. So, so that would be the approach. First, proxy from database. Maybe there is a literature value already to estimate the footprint of your formulation. You will also have the option to add your own emission factors in Nuvio Planet. So if your supplier maybe gives you the exact footprint, you can add it. But that would be my recommendation to follow.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. I'd also like to thank our attendees for taking the time to tune in today. Again, a recording will be made available to view as an on-demand video starting tomorrow. Final reminder, if you would like to download the PDF of the presentation, please do that right now. And of course, we are continuing to schedule more webinars throughout the remainder of the year. To register for upcoming webinars, to view an on-demand video of today's webinar, or to watch webinars on related topics, please visit feedstrategy.com/webinars and feedandgrain.com/webinars. Please remember to take a couple of minutes to answer our short survey at the end of the broadcast. Again, thank you to our sponsor, Datacor, for their participation. For more information on their products and services, please visit datacor.com. Finally, again, extending a big thanks to our speakers for their time. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.